This is part 2, episode 170. The first thing he saw was a special bone dragon. The skeleton of the bone dragon was a strange color of blue-white. Although its bones were white, there was a layer of sparkling blue light around it, and its skeleton was strong. Under its huge wings, there was a skin membrane. Surrounding the bone dragon was a thick, dark aura, like a black cloud, slowly spreading outwards in a black halo. Within the eyes of the bone dragon, a faint blue flame was flickering. And on the back of this bone dragon sat a man clad entirely in black armor. This person was over 2.5 meters tall, sitting upright on the connection part of the back and neck of the bone dragon. In his right hand was a heavy sword that was even taller than he was. The heavy sword flashed with a dazzling dark purple light. That's right, it was him. It was his aura that made Long Houchen's expression turn serious. A knight riding a bone dragon. No, it should be said to be a knight riding a bone dragon king. The bone dragon king under him alone had more than 300,000 units of spiritual energy. And he himself, as Long Houchen had said before, was an existence whose spiritual energy could possibly surpass 700,000. Other than him and the Lich King, the other undead creatures represented the pinnacle of an undead race. They were a skeleton emperor, who was over 30 meters tall, and whose entire body was gleaming with a white jade luster. The underground demon spider emperor, whose purplish-black body was covered with gray spots, who was 20 meters long, with 12 long legs standing in the air. The zombie emperor, with a height of 5 meters, his whole body exuded a dark golden luster, his eyes were lifeless, and his forelimbs were stiff. The loathsome emperor, whose body was the largest, more than 100 meters tall, the size of its waist even larger, was covered in pale white flesh. The spectre emperor, who looked like a mass of dark green fog, but constantly emitting shrill cries. The shadow emperor, whose body was completely black, but was as illusory as a shadow, his features could not be seen. One was 100 meters tall, somewhat thinner than the loathsome emperor. However, he looked even stronger, and his entire body was covered with flashing purple-red stones. He was the Hellfire Emperor. If the Bone Dragon King under that knight was included, at this very moment, the members of the Demon Hunt Squad of Light would be facing the 10 most powerful emperors of this plane. The 10 emperors slowly drew nearer and nearer in the vast grey skies. It could be seen that beneath them were the undead races that were under their control. That endless army of undead. How could it be merely a million? Why? Why do you protect the evolution of Austin and Griffin? Don't you know that it is a symbol of destruction? Get out of the way, ectopic experts. Otherwise, today would be the day of your destruction. I am the dreadful Night Emperor, the Judgment Knight of undead creatures. My words represent the 10 great kings of our clan. With a flash of holy armor, Long Houchen returned to his original form as Holy Unicorn. Riding on the back of the divine Unicorn Star King, he looked at the Judgment Knight of undead creatures before saying indifferently, I don't know what kind of destruction you guys are talking about, and I don't know either about Austin or Griffin. I only know that Hao Yue is my comrade, my brother. Those who destroy its evolution will be my enemies. The purplish-black flames in the eyes of the undead sentinel jumped violently, and the auras of the other 9 undead emperors became even more intense. As he shouted, he pressed his way over. Previously, with Lin Xin and Yating's strength, they had already witnessed the strength of these ectopic experts. Otherwise, the Judgment Knight of undead creatures wouldn't have called them ectopic experts. They knew very well that the number of undead was completely useless against these experts. Only they had the possibility of defeating them. Long Houchen replied in a deep voice, Wenjiao, Duan Yi, the two of you stay by Hao Yue's side, in case any other undead creatures attack. The others were all looking for their opponents. The Judgment Knight of undead creatures is mine. Don't go all out against your opponent, try your best to preserve yourself. What we need to do is to give Hao Yue some time to evolve. Including Yating, the Demon Hunt Squad of Light had a total of 11 people. Although Yang Wenjiao and Duan Yi were on the verge of breaking through the 9th step, their strength was, after all, still lacking compared to the others. In a 1 versus 1 battle, the Demon Hunt Squad of Light definite wouldn't have the upper hand. However, Since the enemies were too strong, Long Houchen didn't dare let them focus their attacks on their side. He had to pull the battle apart. Silver rings of light appeared below everyone's feet. This was Domain of Instant Flash. With the existence of Domain of Instant Flash and soul-sharing chains, Long Houchen was confident in his ability to protect his comrades. Just like how the 10 undead emperors clearly knew that these low-level undead creatures weren't enough to threaten Long Houchen's group, Long Houchen also clearly understood that if his opponent let go of his attack, their pure defense wouldn't last for too long. After all, not everyone in the Demon Hunt Squad of Light was good at defense. Only by enlarging the battlefield could one avoid the concentration of the enemy's power. Long Houchen's opponent was without a doubt the Judgment Knight of Undead Creatures and the Bone Dragon King. These two experts could be said to be the backbone of the 10 great emperors of undead creatures. With their combined spiritual energy, the two of them were probably close to 1,000,000 levels. Facing it alone, Long Houchen had to bear the greatest pressure. However, in retrospect, this was also the best opportunity to test his own strength, and to combine it with the divine throne of eternity and creation. After all, without a sufficiently powerful opponent, how could he unleash all his potential? This time, the divine unicorn didn't transform into a godly armor, but when Long Houchen flew out, he remained there, his wings wide open, and the horn on his head emitted a soft multicolored brilliance. Strange sounds kept coming out from his mouth, as if chanting, but it wasn't as distinct as the holy dragon's magic of draconic rain. This process lasted for about 7 seconds, and just as Long Houchen was about to face his enemy, he transformed into a multicolored godly light, chasing after Long Houchen's body. The divine unicorn disappeared, and what was left on Long Houchen's body was a necklace made of 7 colors flashing on his neck. A dense and pure light essence instantly filled Long Houchen's whole body, increasing it at full speed. As Long Houchen's abilities became stronger and stronger, the divine unicorn's assistance to him was diminishing. It knew that whether it was armor or weapons, it was already not Long Houchen's best choice. Therefore, he used this mimicry technique to transform himself into a necklace, fully amplifying Long Houchen's strength. No matter what was said, a 9th-rank divine unicorn was still more than enough to be a divine artifact. Furthermore, at the time Long Houchen obtained the divine throne of eternity and creation, the divine unicorn had already created its own domain. Holy Domain converts all attributes into the power of holy light. It seemed to be a simple transformation ability, but the consumption of the divine unicorn in this domain was extremely small. In this world where light essence was scarce, it had an extremely huge effect. Therefore, when the divine unicorn turned into a necklace wrapped around his neck, letting out the might of the holy domain, Long Houchen's face was already filled with surprise and joy. The Judgment Knight of Undead Creatures watched as the enemy troops split up and went to face the 10 monarchs. He understood that there was no point in negotiating. Only by killing these enemies from other worlds would he be able to prevent the terrifying Austin Griffin from successfully evolving. The 6 wings on Long Houchen's back flapped, and the divine unicorn's necklace glittered with a rainbow of colors. Coupled with his handsome looks, he was absolutely eye-catching. But when the Judgment Knight of Undead Creatures saw him fly towards him, the spirit fire in his eyes throbbed, showing a look of disdain. His cultivation was the strongest, and thus only he could feel that this evolution of Hao Yue's was bound to take a considerable amount of time. However, he did not dare to be negligent. If he had interrupted its evolution a second earlier, the chances of it being completely destroyed would have increased. The Bone Dragon King let out an icy blue breath, heading straight for Long Houchen. Through the perception of the Judgment Knight of Undead Creatures, he understood that Long Houchen's cultivation wasn't even at the 4th rank of the 9th stage. So he wasn't that much stronger than him, let alone the fact that he thought he had the advantage of a physical body. Facing the Bone Dragon King's breath, Long Houchen didn't dodge. Lifting his left hand, the divine snail shield of sun and moon released its rainbow-colored light, forming a 2-meter-wide shield that completely protected his body. The icy blue breath bombarded the 7-colored divine snail shield of sun and moon, immediately letting out an icy blue fog around Long Houchen's body. The temperature dropped sharply. There were even countless ice shards in the air. Even the divine snail shield of sun and moon in Long Houchen's hand was covered in a crystalline blue ice color. What a powerful combination of darkness and ice. This should be the Bone Dragon King's innate magic. Compared to him, the ability Queen of the Moon displayed back then was far inferior. At the same time the Bone Dragon King breathed out, its massive body brazenly charged at Long Houchen. At the same time, the Judgment Knight of Undead Creatures took off his purplish-black sword. Behind him, a black fog surged, turning into a sinister ghost face. The terrifying pressure caused the air around Long Houchen to emit a dark, corrosive sizzling sound. A golden halo spread out from Long Houchen's body, and it was precisely the light god's domain. Pure light essence instantly dispersed the darkness surrounding his body. At the same time, a bright white halo spread out from Long Houchen's body, mixing with the rainbow light from the light god's domain, directly colliding with the Judgment Knight of Undead Creatures and the Bone Dragon King. As two kings of this plane, the Judgment Knight of Undead Creatures and the Bone Dragon King were slightly shocked when the sparkling white light appeared. This was because they felt an indescribable fear. The flames of his soul seemed to be greatly threatened. What kind of aura was this? The Judgment Knight of Undead Creatures didn't dare to be negligent. Pointing his great sword in the air, he released his own domain. A purplish-black halo spread out, enveloping him and the Bone Dragon King within. The two domains collided violently in mid-air. Hiss hiss, a large amount of light mist filled the air. There were no collisions, but it was as if ice and fire were clashing against each other. Within a kilometer radius, purplish-black mixed with golden mist rose up. It could clearly be seen that the purplish-black color was suppressed by the multicolored golden light. With every dot of the multicolored golden light, the purplish-black light was consumed at least 3 times. Domain suppression. The clash of light and darkness should have been evenly matched, let alone the fact that the Judgment Knight of Undead Creatures relied on a cultivation far superior to Long Houchen's. However, he never expected that under the circumstances of their domain collision, he would be the one to suffer. The fact that two completely opposite attributes were suppressed only proved one thing: Long Houchen's domain was far higher than his domain. However, Long Houchen didn't feel good either. Even though the light god domain was on a much higher level than the darkness trial domain of the opponent. However, at the same time, his cultivation was greatly inferior to his opponent. Above the 9th step, step by step. The Judgment Knight's cultivation just broke through the 7th rank of the 9th step not long ago, who was the #1 expert of this plane. Although his domain was inferior to the light god domain regarding to level. However, the total amount was also more than 3 times stronger than the light god domain. Therefore, Long Houchen didn't have the upper hand in this field collision. Furthermore, don't forget, under the Judgment Knight, there was a Bone Dragon King with the same cultivation level. Roar, roar, roar. The Bone Dragon King let out 3 roars in succession, letting out 3 icy blue breaths at the same time. However, it wasn't aimed at Long Houchen. 3 breaths formed a triangle in the air. Icy blue light shot out from each of them, connecting the 3 breath support points. Immediately, an extremely cold feeling appeared on Long Houchen's body. In the middle of the ice blue triangle, a dark blue black hole appeared. A blue light flashed. In the next instant, a dark blue ray of light in the size of an arm was shot at Long Houchen's chest. Domain skills. This was clearly the Bone Dragon King's domain skill. Right this time, Long Houchen didn't dare show the slightest reservation. The layer of silver-white light radiating from his body was incandescent, and his towering aura transformed into a crystalline pillar of light that burst forth from his body. Following that, in mid-air, a thick multicolored flame spewed out from that glowing white pillar of light, rapidly shrinking. When it got contact with the frozen blue ray of Bone Dragon King's domain skill, it had already shrunk to the same thickness as its opponent. Boom! The sky was filled with flashes of light, and the icy blue triangle formed by the Bone Dragon King was instantly shattered. The multicolored light also spread outwards, forming layers of rainbow luster in the air. And at the same time, when white pillar of light appeared, Long Houchen's light god domain instantly ignited, which gradually suppressed the opponent's domain. This greatly shocked the Judgment Knight. He had no choice but to do his best to control his domain to fight against it. A huge throne appeared in the air, glowing white and radiating with the radiance of 9 colors. On the back of the chair, there were many minute reliefs that gave off an indescribable sense of beauty. At the top, it was the sun, the moon, and the stars. Birds and beasts were in the middle, and what was attached to the seats were the scenes of nature. On the arms of a pair of seats were the statue of the Holy Dragon and the 12-winged angels. As soon as it appeared, the 9-colored halo instantly became the center of attention. Fortunately, the undead creatures below were still very far away, and not directly affected. Still, when it came, this black and red world seemed to have been purified, and the air became much purer. Long Houchen's body floated in front of that throne, and this was the first time he activated the power of the divine throne of eternity and creation. This feeling was wonderful. It was as if he had an invincible backer. No matter how powerful the enemy was, the instant the divine throne of eternity and creation appeared, all the pressure vanished. The Judgment Knight and Bone Dragon King were truly stunned. The aura radiating from the divine throne of eternity and creation was just too terrifying. They were all undead creatures, and their most fundamental power was the flame of their own soul. And at the instant the divine throne of eternity and creation appeared, the flames of their souls trembled violently. Even a Judgment Knight, with such powerful strength, was no exception. The trembling in their souls made them want to turn and run, not fight. However, they couldn't run. Austin and Griffin were about to complete their evolution. Once their cultivation levels increased once again, no one in this world would be able to control them. At the same time, based on its habits, all the undead creatures at the scene probably wouldn't have any chance to live. Sooner or later, they would be destroyed completely by it. Since that was the case, he might as well give it his all. Long Houchen calmly said, "Undead monarch, I didn't intend to make you my enemy. As long as you leave and don't disturb Hou's evolution, we won't harm any of you." The Judgment Knight of undead creatures coldly replied, "Retreating is the same as dying. Do you think you can stop us with just a super divine artifact? No, you're wrong. We are the true masters of the earth, which is already covered in darkness and fire." As he said that, he slowly raised the purplish-black sword in his hand. On the ground, all the Knights of Fear let out an angry roar at the same time, and immediately afterwards, countless streams of dark energy swept up from below, assaulting the Judgment Knight of undead creatures' body. In the face of the pressure of the divine throne of eternity and creation, a strong will of indomitable will was released. With the help of his subordinates, he was able to stabilize his spirit fire. With a roar, the Bone Dragon King brought the undead knight to launch another attack at Long Houchen. Since he couldn't stop his opponent with his words, he could only rely on his own strength. The divine throne of eternity and creation instantly turned into 13 balls of white light, separating behind Long Houchen. Time seemed to slow down at this moment, and the speed at which the Judgment Knight of undead creatures and the Bone Dragon King advanced greatly decreased during this strange time change. And that milky white radiance was just like 100 rivers, finding different parts of Long Houchen's body. The first white light fell on Long Houchen's chest, and immediately, a huge transparent gem appeared on his chest. It was as if a complete round gem had been split into two, embedded in his chest and back. The gem was almost half a foot in diameter, almost covering the majority of Long Houchen's chest. When the mosaic is complete, immediately, a sparkling white radiance spread to the surroundings, turning into a special kind of metal covering Long Houchen's front and back. What appeared on the surface of the metal was a pattern of the sun, moon and stars, as well as an innumerable amount of strange markings. The second ball of white light fell on Long Houchen's head, turning it into a sparkling white crown. On the crown were 9 gems, glinting with 9 colors: red, orange, yellow, green, blue, purple, black and white. 9 colors flashed, and within the nobility, there was an aura of absolute domination. The Emperor's crown bound Long Houchen's golden hair to the back of his head, and the instant he landed on Long Houchen's head, a sparkling white mask was placed on the front of his head. As the mask fell off, Long Houchen's body was immediately filled with endless dignity. The third and fourth balls of white light landed on Long Houchen's shoulders, and a sparkling white glow spread out, forming a perfect necklace for his chest armor. The left shoulder armor was a huge dragon head, while the right shoulder armor was a 12-winged angel statue. It was clearly the armrest of the divine throne of eternity and creation. The sparkling white armor extended all the way to his arms, completely covering both of Long Houchen's arms and hands. It was engraved with a fine pattern of countless living creatures. There were too many types of living creatures. If one didn't look closely, it would be impossible to see the patterns clearly. One could only feel their nobility and magnificence. The fifth ball of white light landed on Long Houchen's waist, and the armor on his waist was in the shape of a fish scale. Every scale was engraved with a pattern, looking like a kind of plant. The waist armor spread downwards, forming a pleated battle dress. The battle dress seemed to be coiled with the picture of a divine dragon, turning into a white halo of light as it spiraled around. The sixth and seventh clumps of light landed on his legs, covering Long Houchen's legs and feet completely. At this point, Long Houchen's entire body was completely enveloped by this eternal armor. The eighth and ninth clumps of light covered the eternal card before landing on his back. Long Houchen's original 6 golden wings vanished, to be replaced by a pair of huge white wings. This pair of wings was even larger than the previous 3 teams combined, completely covering Long Houchen's back. Even when he was folding his wings, he kept his head high above him. The 10th ball of light fell in Long Houchen's hands. It transformed into a huge glowing white sword. The design of the great sword was very simple and unadorned. There weren't even any patterns. However, on its sparkling white body, there was a flash of 9 colors. This was the only weapon that the divine throne of eternity and creation had given Long Houchen, the eternal sword. The last 3 lumps of white light clashed against the huge gem protecting Long Houchen's chest before bouncing back. During the rebound, only 1 ball of white light remained glowing white, while the other 2 balls were split into 7 colors and jade green. These 3 balls of light were just like loyal guards, circling around Long Houchen's body and going back and forth. The whole process sounded complicated, but it was actually completed within a few breaths' time. This was the super divine artifact, the power of the divine throne of eternity and creation. The divine throne of eternity and creation transformed into an eternal armor covering his entire body. Long Houchen felt as if he had really reached the level described by Sign of Light Elux, grasping the sun, moon and stars. The eternal sword in his hand swept out in front of him, and a monstrous sword intent seemed to materialize in the air. Clang! With a crisp sound, the eternal sword blocked the purplish-black great sword belonging to Judgment, Knight of Undead Creatures. A pitch-black fog formed the most malevolent demon, crazily engulfing Long Houchen. 9 colored lights bloomed, clashing against the black fog, instantly shattering it. Long Houchen shook his arm, launching an inexhaustible force to repel the Judgment Knight riding the Bone Dragon King 100 meters back. At the same time, the darkness elemental essence in the air fused with Long Houchen at great speed. After passing through that 9 colored halos, it turned into a pure elemental essence, fusing into Long Houchen's body. Holding the eternity, one had the world. Long Houchen didn't know which level his own strength had reached. He could only feel that the light god domain had completely merged with the eternal realm, and he seemed to be able to command an unending stream of power. This was the first time he used the divine throne of eternity and creation, and countless experiences kept appearing in his heart. Countless pieces of information from the divine throne entered his soul, which he kept receiving and absorbing. In this way, he didn't take the initiative to attack the Judgment Knight. The Judgment Knight was a little anxious. The power of the supradivine equipment was greater than he had expected. Long Houchen's cultivation was clearly far inferior to his, but under this exchange, he didn't gain the slightest advantage. He and the Bone Dragon King roared at the same time. Once again charging at Long Houchen, he launched an all-out attack. The eternal sword in Long Houchen's hand flew up and down, as if he was taking a leisurely stroll, unceasingly diffusing the attacks of these 2 undead emperors. They could attack however they wished. Long Houchen was still floating there, The 9-colored sword beams opened and closed, blocking again and again the attacks of the opponent. At the same time Long Houchen stabilized the situation, the other party's battles were already in full swing. The one Caia was looking for was an illusory figure, whose body was completely black, making it impossible to see its facial features. This was because she could sense that the Shadow Emperor's power was extraordinary. It was even more terrifying than the Lich King. Indeed, just as she met the Shadow Emperor, an accident occurred. With a flash of the sickle of the god of death, Caia was like a bolt of lightning, dodging the opponent. However, she was shocked to discover that her sickle of the god of death didn't hit the actual body, but seemed to fly across the air. When she turned around, she only saw that the Shadow Emperor was already less than 100 meters away from the evolving Haoyue. Not good. Caia was greatly shocked. A powerful white light burst forth from her body, spanning 1,000 meters in an instant. It formed a white curtain of light, blocking the Shadow Emperor. However, the Shadow Emperor didn't seem to care at all, charging straight towards the purifying light. But this time he didn't succeed. Seeing his black figure colliding with the purifying light, a mournful soul whistle erupted, and the Shadow Emperor's body bounced back even faster than before. Caia coldly snorted, thinking that if the opponent can avoid being affected by her physical attack, does he still want to avoid being affected by the purifying light? As for the battle against undead creatures, no one was more suited to her strength than Caia. The strongest ability of the inheritance from the god of death was purifying the undead. Although the Shadow Emperor's cultivation was extremely high. However, due to his carelessness, his soul was still burnt by the purifying light. At the same time, Caia lifted her left hand, and with a flash of golden light, a small golden pagoda with 7 floored appeared on her palm. Flashes of different colors of light were released from the pagoda, flying rapidly towards Haoyue on the ground, while the sickle of the god of death in Kaia's hand transformed into 10,000 figures of light in the air. There was a total of 12 flowing lights, shot out from the Tower of Eternity, and when they landed on the ground, they coincidentally formed a circle, protecting Haoyue. Weren't they the 12 holy guards who tested the bright rays of sunlight many times in the Tower of Eternity? The Scion of Light Elux didn't only leave Caia with this divine equipment of the Tower of Eternity, but also with the 12 holy guards, who had fought on the battlefield with him in the past and made countless contributions. However, because the Tower of Eternity was lowered from the edge of a super-divine equipment to the level of a divine one, the strength of these 12 holy guards was weakened to a certain extent. They were powerhouses of the 9th level, but only at the early level 9. But even so, they still 12 powerhouses of 9th level with thousands of years of combat experience. During the great battle in the temple, if it weren't for the fact that she was not allowed to use weapons, Caia would have been invincible against all opponents even if she only relied on the Tower of Eternity. Of course, after obtaining the divine throne of eternity and creation, the strength of Long Houchen's group was already incomparable to other teams. The 12 holy guards had thousands of years of battle experience. With them guarding Haoyue, even if these emperors broke through the seal of the Demon Hunt Squad of Light, they wouldn't be able to directly harm Haoyue. Yang Wenjiao and Duan Yi stood at the closest place to Haoyue, and seeing the great battle in the sky, both of them were dazzled. In particular, the instant the divine throne of eternity and creation appeared, the shock in their hearts reached its peak. Until now, Yang Wenjiao gave up have any thought of comparing Long Houchen with him, because he knew that even if he had paying his lifetime for preparing and training, he wouldn't be able to catch up to Long Houchen. The strength of the Shadow Emperor was indeed as great as Caia expected. After his soul was injured, he quickly stabilized his position. Gray streams of air spread out from his body. Even when they met with the purifying light, they did not dissipate. Instead, the area they covered grew larger and larger. They formed a battlefield between Caia and him. A dark and cold aura assaulted Caia, who held the sickle of the god of death, but didn't act rashly. The purifying domain continued to spread out, but it didn't spread too far. It only maintained a diameter of 20 meters. With such a distance as a buffer, no matter which side the Shadow Emperor attacked from, she would still be able to react in time. Suddenly, a chill ran down his spine. Caia almost instantly turned around without hesitation, the sickle of the god of death carrying with it a sharp and cold glint of lightning. It was the 7 arts of the god of death, the death sickle of death. With a crisp sound, the body of the Shadow Emperor flashed and disappeared. The grey luster surrounding his body actually blocked the purifying light of Caia, but he didn't stay in the purifying domain for long either, retreating immediately after his attack. Kaia's eyes narrowed. She knew that she had met an unprecedented enemy. As an assassin, she was ambushed and attacked by the Shadow Emperor. But she had no other choice. In terms of hiding abilities, she was far inferior to him. The Shadow Emperor's domain might not have anything to do with his attacks, but it had a huge effect on his ability to conceal himself and increase his resistance. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to block the purifying light. However, in terms of physical and mental strength, Caia, this Emperor of Shadows, was an undead creature no matter what. As long as it was an undead creature, there was no one who wasn't suppressed by the purifying light. His opponent might be able to preserve from the purifying light for a short period of time, but after a long time, he still couldn't resist. Otherwise, with the strength of the Shadow Emperor, he would have chosen to go head-to-head with him long ago, instead of engaging in a battle. Do you want to use up all my spiritual energy? Caia revealed a cold smile from the corner of her mouth. Although her cultivation was far inferior to Long Houchen's, the recovery ability of the purifying domain was in no way inferior to Long Houchen's light god domain. In this place full of undead creatures, the purifying light was always purifying the aura of death. At this very moment, a sudden chill appeared from the side, and Kaia's sickle of the god of death was once again launched. There was another crisp ding sound. This time, Kaia's body shook violently, and her complexion changed. The Shadow Emperor's attack power was very strong, and even with the sickle of the god of death in his hand, Caia was greatly shaken. Moreover, she could only discover it when her opponent was close to her. She was, without a doubt, very passive. The Shadow Emperor did not have a main body, and only seemed to exist in the form of a soul. This caused his physical attacks to have no effect on him. If she continued to be passively attacked, Kia's situation would only become more and more disadvantageous, because she would only be able to avoid being at a disadvantage if she relied on the 7 arts of the god of death to clash with her opponent. One could imagine how much of the 7 arts of the god of death had consumed. Just like Long Houchen against the Judgment Knight of Undead Creatures and the Bone Dragon King, Caia was in a deadlock. The only difference was that Long Houchen was the one suppressing his opponent, while Caia was being suppressed on the other side. Caia was looking for the Shadow Emperor, while Yating was looking for the Spectre Emperor. The two emperors had one thing in common, and that was that they did not have a physical body. They were the two that were the most difficult to deal with the exception of the Judgment Knight of Undead Creatures. The king's sword was no longer a single one, but 1,000. It connected in the air and continuously blocked the Spectre Emperor's path of escape. Yating's light attributability inherited Long Houchen's bloodline's purity. Although the Spectre Emperor was powerful, his offensive power was mainly displayed on his soul. As the Elf King of Light, Yating's soul was extremely stable. And furthermore, the body of the current the Queen of the Moon wasn't her own. So when she was a light elemental fairy, she also took the form of a soul. After fusing the two swords, she had the ability to solidify her soul. It could be said that it perfectly countered the attack of the Spectre Emperor. In this way, Yating completely suppressed her opponent, and the Spectre Emperor tried to break through as well. But under the attack of the King's sword, he was completely unable to approach Yating's body. He could only dodge continuously. He was truly in a sorry state. This video will end here.